The hot topic today, what are the unions prepared to do to save 6,600 state workers from losing their jobs? Governor Malloy made state employees an offer, $1.6 billion in concessions. They voted it down. Now he's filling the hole with cuts and layoffs. Now today we have Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman is here to talk about the latest developments and what the governor is willing to do. We'll also hear from union leaders, Union President Patrice Peterson, on what the unions are prepared to do and can that be done in a pretty short period of time. I want to thank you both for joining us here on Face the State.
Thanks for having us.
Good.
We appreciate it.
Very new developments really this week, and I understand, and I want to start with you, Patrice, because I think the ball is really in your court at this point. A disappointment, I know, for some union leaders who were hoping that this agreement would pass. It didn't, even though a majority voted for it. What can be done in these final weeks?
Well, I think that we can move forward. I think that's an important piece that's happening here, that the status quo is just kind of a mess right now. Well, there is no status quo, so we need to figure out a way to move forward. We did have a majority of unions and a majority of our members did vote yes for the concession agreement, so we know that we can work with our members in the interest of our members to put forward a concession package that will work for all of us.
And if you could explain briefly, because I think a lot of people don't understand that how an agreement that can pass with a 57% majority can still be rejected. How does that happen?
Well, we have bylaws, of course, that run CBAC, and in those bylaws, we have always maintained an incredibly high standard for passing any kind of a concession package. Concessions, just by the word concession, means give back, and in the collective bargaining arena that we work in, which is so critical to us, we need to make sure that the standard is high. However, as our workforce is more diverse and we have multiple generations working, we need to be a little more lenient, but not so much lenient that anybody could walk away with an agreement. We still need to maintain a high standard for our members on how we would put a concession package together.
Lieutenant Governor Wyman, Governor Malloy worked very hard on this deal, and I know that his chief negotiator, Mark Ojakian, spent many long hours putting this together. And the governor said today, and has said pretty much since this agreement failed, that he was not interested in going back to square one, but the door isn't completely closed. Why not?
You know what? We would love to see the agreement ratified. We were disappointed, as many of the union members were disappointed that it wasn't ratified. We have two options right now. One of them is one of the things that we have to do, and that is to continue to go forward on the path to fill the hole that we have by not having the agreement. And the other one is, and the governor agrees, is that if the unions can come up with a solution, our door is still open to them. And that there will be constant interfacing between our chief negotiator and the union's chief negotiator. You know, the governor has never wanted, nor I, to lay off people. Our state employees are part of the people that we work with all the time. And the fact is that most people don't realize that these state employees have faces, have names, have families. We don't want to lay them off. And so if they can find a way to get an agreement done, our door is open. And it's open till about August 31st. And everybody knows that's the deadline because everything has to be kicking in. Meanwhile, till the unions finish their job, we're going to have to continue to hand out the pink slips that we never wanted to hand out, to start cutting the programs that we never wanted to do. Hopefully that they can come up with something that really does work to make the state a better place.
Many thought this was a good compromise, a good agreement. What do you think went wrong? There were some questions whether people didn't understand. It certainly was a very complex agreement when you talk about health care and changes. Do you think that there was misinformation, confusion, and that contributed to the fact that members voted against it?
It was pretty multi-layered. You're correct. It was a very complex agreement. We were not just looking at very short-term types of solutions. We were looking at the restructuring that Governor Malloy has been talking about with us all along, that we were excited about participating in a process that would help sustain our benefits in retiree health care as well as our pensions. So we kind of bit off a lot all at the same time. As a result, the communication took a long time. The meetings that we had with our members took a couple of hours sometimes to get done. And that also helped with the confusion. And there was misinformation and continues to be misinformation that certain groups that would prefer to have state government run more efficiently means less people, where we believe that state government can run more efficiently with our input in working with the governor on how to streamline services.
And I understand that the big change really in health care was what's called a value added, which really gives state workers a little bit more of an incentive, if you will, to take more tests and do things. Do you think that in its face was threatening for some state workers, that they were told that they had to do these certain tests and they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to be told they had to do it?
We did hear that from many members until we explained exactly how it worked and that there were very few changes. The tests that were going to be mandated were tests that were already not required, but were the standard of care for people in our health care plan as it is today. And the fact that your health care plan would not be changing, same doctors, same services, and it would just be a minimal type of service needed to occur for you to be able to stay within the health enhancement program.
And I know, Lieutenant Governor, you with a few days before the vote, wanted to make it clear that this was not sustenance, and that was something that was out there for quite a period of time. Do you think that also...
Some of the misinformation, as Patrice talked about, was that everybody was going to be in sustenance, and that some state employees thought they would be in Medicaid, and that wasn't true. People just did not understand that this program that was suggested and that we agreed upon was to keep people healthy. And no matter what we say, that we know that if you save and you use preventative medicine, in the long run, we save a lot of money and people aren't as sick. And the information couldn't get out for people to understand that. And they got hooked on this thing called sustenance. And I really do believe that there were people out there that truly were purposely giving misinformation. That there were groups out there that wanted us to turn to be like Wisconsin. That they wanted state government to be so angry at our unions. And that's not what this was all about.
I want to keep this going, but I want you to hold that thought, but we have to take a break for 1 second. We'll be right back with more from Lieutenant Governor and Union President Patrice Peterson. More right after the break. We'll be right back. We're back on Face the State with Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman and Union President Patrice Peterson. Back to talk about something that you had mentioned before the break, that you felt that there was some intent to sabotage, if you will, this vote and get bad information out there. Why do you feel that way?
You know what? Because when we did meet with different people, different union members, they kept hearing all these wrong information. And we know that there have been people from Wisconsin that has come in and probably given some money to other groups to make the deal look bad. Or, you know, we're hearing that, oh, this is a sweet deal for the unions. We were hearing that, oh, it was a terrible deal for the unions. And, you know, the truth is it was an agreement that we thought was fair and equitable. That it would still, I think, take care of ourselves, the state employees, as a state employee, and I am one for many years, as far as our health care. But at the same time, it would be looking to the future for the state to turn things around with unfunded liabilities, that they, you know, taking care of the unfunded liabilities, to making sure that there's a real foundation for the future. And people could not get that across to our union members. You know, there are certain tricks that were played in previous negotiations that the governor and I felt were not good for the future of the state. And I know that some people felt that early retirement should be handed to them. And we saw what happened in all these previous early retirements. They costed us much more money than we should have had, and it costed the state much more money with unfunded liabilities. And I think people expected that, so we had some people voting against that because they wanted that. But for the future and for the way we have to change the state around, those are not good ideas.
Clearly, things are negotiated differently in different times, and when this concession or this agreement, the current contract with state workers was, I believe John Rowland was the one who initiated that. Different times probably required different measures, and I think a lot of people now are saying, you know, are those same perks, whether it be longevity payment, being able to use overtime to, you know, to calculate your pension, are those things that are really fair and equitable, especially when you're talking about a tax increase of $1.5 billion.
It depends upon how you look at it. Longevity actually goes back to Governor, I think it goes back to Governor Grasso.
Grasso, yes.
Goes way back. When the state couldn't afford to give raises, they put longevity in place, and it just is kind of a tradition. And for many state employees, it is a capped type of a benefit. For example, I receive $600 twice a year. I have over 30 years of service. So it certainly is not changing my lifestyle. In other bargaining units, it is used as a way to progress through the pay scale. So you would have to adopt the pay scale in a different way than you do it now, which is a whole different process of collective bargaining. So longevity kind of rubs both ways. And I know for the managers that longevity is a big issue, but we don't provide services for collective bargaining with them. In terms of overtime, if you're going to change the game in the middle of somebody's employment, you have to think very carefully about how that's done. There is a law currently in place that does provide a cap. It isn't used a whole lot. A lot of our overtime in the state of Connecticut, because we have downsized the government but not the services, because the services have been needed, that a lot of the overtime is mandated. And the mandated overtime is not capped. The rest of the overtime is capped, and I don't think a lot of people understand that that's the case.
Many of the state workers that I had the chance to speak with felt that every time there's a budget crisis that the governors go to them. Rel did not lay off any workers, but she certainly got, I think, $750 million in concessions. She did early retirement, and they feel that that's unfair. They didn't create the mess, they didn't create the problem. But then you can talk to other people who feel everyone's part of the solution. Do you agree with that?
I do believe that everybody's part of the solution, and as state employees, we've always been part of the solution. I think that people got upset this time because in the 2009 concession package with Governor Rel, nobody else was required to provide any concessions whatsoever. And now when we come 3 years later and have to provide concessions again, it needed to be part of an entire package, which is why I know the Governor Malloy understood that he did need to look at the tax structure, that he did need to look at other ways of bringing revenue into the state, opening the state for business, for example. That's important for us, that we are not this time, once again, going to be the only ones at the plate. Somebody needs to be in the batter's box.
Let's talk about going forward. We had an agreement, it failed. There's been talk about changing bylaws. All of that would have to be done in a very quick period of time. The governor is still not convinced that can be done. He said, you know, whatever you have to do, but show me and spell out a plan. Is that basically what needs to be done? And pointing out that by August 31st, if an agreement is not reached, 6,600 people could lose their jobs.
And we're hoping that, you know, a lot of this right now, and I am not going to just push this to Patrice, but it is in the union's hands. We have to continue to go forward because, as you said, August 31st is coming. So we are in the process of doing the tough job of getting pink slips ready and sending them out. That is not easy to do. But, you know, if there is no other alternative for us unless the unions can come up with a different kind of ratification. And as I said, the governor is keeping the door open, and we do have our chief negotiator in interfacing with their chief negotiator. You know, we've all known each other for a very long time, and we would love to see the original program ratified. but we're also listening to whatever they can come up with. We hope that they can come up with something that so we don't have to go through everything by August 31st.
I understand that the bylaws are, some call them archaic, they need to be changed, but at a time when all this is going on, what kind of backlash do you think that will have on the membership if the board decides now to kind of change the bylaws?
Well, no matter what you do, you're never going to make everybody happy. I mean, that's just kind of
I've heard that before.
No matter where it is, no matter what part of your life, that's always going to be the case. What we have to be aware of is what's important for the state of Connecticut, what's important for the services we provide, and what's important for our employees. And we are going to review. We've already agreed to review our structure. It is archaic. It was put together in the 90s, and as you said earlier, times have changed. And we need to change with it, and it needs to reflect more where we are today and where our members are today. So we are going to move forward in reviewing what our structure is and making the changes that would be necessary if we do find them to be necessary. And then we'll continue talks with the governor and with the chief spokesperson, Marco Jakian, and hopefully we intend to have an agreement.
Not to put you on the hot spot, but I will anyway.
Okay.
How optimistic on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think that all of this can be done in a, little more than a 6-week period?
10.
All right, there we go.
We love that.
Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
And we'll have to keep posted and see what's happening with that. Thank you so much.